What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Nothing But Anime. We're continuing our What If Deku Became a Teacher series with part 14. If you're enjoying this, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to stay updated on all the latest videos. Let's get started. Waking up one Tuesday morning, Izuku felt the familiar rush of an emotional cocktail of excitement and anxiety as he got himself ready to leave Hiroshima. Yesterday, he finally got his hands on the property title of the rundown Numeta River apartments he's had his eye on since he could remember. Izuku would have to find out which Monday would be best for Uraraka-san to come to inspect it. But that would have to wait for later as Izuku had a lot to do today. He's scheduled to see 2 properties in the Mujishima district and he's already arranged so that he'll jump into teaching there for the day. Today will also be the final day of the EMT course he and Osamu-kun enrolled in, and there were a bunch of garbled texts from his fellow tutos about his anxious excitement. Embarrassingly, Izuku wasn't just going to be finished with the EMT course. He mistakenly hadn't been paying attention to his progress with his teaching degree, and so he was thoroughly surprised to see he was close to graduation. Again. So Izuku has to arrange his finals on top of everything else he has going on today. Izuku swore if he goes to college again, he'll pay more attention because he doesn't want this to become any more of a thing than it already has. So, a good part of Izuku's drive was dedicated to mentally cataloging what he'd have to get done that week. He had a viewing in Kauchi, and he was going to close the deal on an old but still in good condition duplex, a few counseling sessions with various people, and he was going to check up on Iguchi-san's progress in the technical school he chose. For as intense as his schedule was, Izuku couldn't say he regretted any of his choices, especially not when he got to the university and saw Osamu-kun pacing back and forth muttering to himself waiting by the bench they always meet up at. Having been in Osamu-kun's place more than once, Izuku couldn't blame the boy for being so wound up. "Osamu-kun," Izuku softly called, and the boy jumped, then turned to Izuku red face. "Hi Mido-senpai. Sorry for not noticing you sooner." Osamu-kun quickly apologized, his embarrassment causing his voice to crack, but Izuku brushed it off and decided to change the topic for Osamu-kun's sake. "Come on. Rain-sensei will chew us out if we're late," he commented, and Osamu-kun swiftly nodded. "All right." The boy agreed, speedwalking towards the university. Izuku had to bite his tongue to keep from chuckling as he followed Osamu-kun. His laughter wouldn't help with the boy's nerves, and Izuku needed to be the kid's rock today. The EMT finals were overseen by another 3 doctors to ensure their certification was an impartial decision. With 3 new people judging them and being the ones to decide whether or not they could be certified, Osamu-kun needed Izuku's calm facade to keep from having a breakdown. Izuku wished he could give Osamu-kun more than just emotional support for the physical portion of the exam, but that could make both of them fail the course. At least he could stay in the room to watch Osamu-kun, but Izuku had to remain very still so neither were accused of cheating. Izuku couldn't help smiling, a touch of pride mixing in with his fondness at watching Osamu-kun perform CPR and stitching up an orange like he had practiced. Risking a glance at the doctors, Izuku couldn't help feeling the bitterness of uncertainty coating his tongue. The what-if of them barring Osamu-kun because of his age or the fact he was quirkless had him tense. He wouldn't mind if he failed, as this certification would just be another paper for his mom to frame, but this was possibly the only way for Osamu-kun to achieve his dream. Even if Izuku hadn't studied with Osamu-kun every Tuesday for 5 months, just talking about it with the boy made his passion for medicine clear. Passion aside, Osamu-kun worked his butt off every day studying every medical textbook he could get his hands on. Osamu-kun would prattle off all the little things he's learned about the human body if you'd let him. Honestly, if that was how he looked when he rambled about quirks and heroes, it was no wonder his mom and auntie would encourage it. Once Osamu-kun finished, he silently stood off to the side with Izuku away from their course mates. Osamu-kun's hands were trembling so bad Izuku would have thought he'd held hands with Yuri-san. Izuku placed a comforting hand on Osamu-kun's shoulder and hoped the doctors weren't quirkist. Half an hour after the doctors left to discuss who'd pass, they returned with their certificates to be signed. Izuku has never felt so relieved to have his name called by a teacher. Midoriya Izuku, Tara Osamu. Rain-sensei called, motioning the 2 of them over. Walking over to the counter, Izuku and Osamu-kun were both given a certificate to sign. "Congratulations on finishing the course," Rain-sensei said, offering them both a pen. "Thank you, Rain-sensei." Izuku replied, taking the pen and signing his name onto the certificate, then offered the pen to Osamu-kun. The boy stared up at him. "Here," Izuku prompted, and Osamu-kun took a deep breath and then proceeded to sign his paper. Finished, the 2 boys walked out of the building with their certificates in hand. Izuku huffed, wondering if his mom would be proud. He got EMT certified and looked towards Osamu-kun to congratulate him, but noticed that the boy was staring at his paper. "Osamu-kun," Izuku said, and the boy's lip trembled. "Sorry Mido-senpai, it's just Osamu-kun's voice was heavy with emotion, tears building in the corners of his eyes. "I did it," Osamu-kun said out of disbelief. His words barely above a whisper. I can do it," he exclaimed, his exhilaration overwhelming him to the point of tears. "I'm going to help people," Osamu-kun cried, clutching his certificate to his chest as joy and disbelief bubbled over into tears and breathless laughter. Izuku watched on, unable to feel anything less than pride, and relished in his fellow Tuto's happiness. Osamu-kun had worked hard and had earned every moment of his joy, and maybe if Izuku was living vicariously through the boy, well, it wouldn't make the moment any less special for either of them. Osamu-kun launched himself at Izuku, hugging him, and Izuku laughed along with Osamu-kun, not at all bothered when he was soaked in tears and covered in snot. He and his mom often cried buckets more than Osamu-kun ever could. Osamu-kun also seemed to recover from his emotional maelstrom faster as well, pulling away from Izuku only a couple of minutes later and wiping away his tears. Sorry about that, Amito-senpai. Just Osamu-kun tried to apologize, his cheeks turning red from shame, but stopped when Izuku ruffled the boy's hair. You just finished taking the first step to live your dream. That's amazing and you deserve to be happy about it, Izuku assured, and Osamu-kun looked so relieved when he said that, then beamed up at him. He muttered, "Ah, that was so sweet. It makes me want to throw up," someone said, making them both jump. But they relaxed once they realized it was just Zuki-san. Osamu-kun ran up to him, immediately happily presenting his certificate. "Papa. Look, I did it. I'm going to be an EMT," he excitedly proclaimed, and Zuki-san gave him a grin in return. "You're going to have to find someone crazy enough to hire you first, little bastard," the man corrected, flicking Osamu-kun's forehead. Osamu-kun laughed, rubbing his head. "I'll find someone, even if I have to go to the other side of Japan." Osamu-kun told him, only to be pulled into a headlock. "Oh, does the bastard think he can just abandon the person that's fed you, bathe you, and put clothes on your back?" Zuki-san teased, giving the kid a noogie. "Papa." Osamu-kun shrieked, trying to beat Zuki-san off of him. Izuku felt his heart being painfully constricted looking at the two interact so playfully, and he tried hard to ignore it. Resentment was an ugly emotion that Izuku loathed feeling because it was envy's bitter sibling, and both of those made a part of Izuku that he strongly disliked about himself rear its ugly head. Mainly because it pushed such negative feelings onto people Izuku knew didn't deserve it. Izuku was brought out of his thoughts by someone flicking his forehead. "Oi," Zuki-san said, and Izuku could feel his face burning. "Why yes, Zuki-san?" he asked, resisting the urge to bury his head in the ground. "Come on, Dillweed, we're getting lunch. My treat, so you better be fucking grateful," Zuki-san told him in the way Izuku knew meant he was better off not trying to turn him down. "We're going to my favorite restaurant," Osamu-kun said, grabbing his hand to lead him to where they were going. "It has the best dumplings," the boy excitedly commented before launching into telling Izuku everything he could about the restaurant. Zuki-san dutifully following along behind them, snickering at the greenette. The restaurant was a comfy little surf and turf bar and grill by the river. Izuku found himself sitting with both of the Terras enjoying stir-fry and fried shrimp, and Zuki-san was nursing some sake. But he had a high enough tolerance that Izuku didn't feel uncomfortable with it. "Maybe I can even afford to get some of those Swiss shoes. You know, the ones that have good traction and arch support. I'll need those things when I start working," Osamu-kun muttered, since Izuku had mentioned he should be looking into getting his gear together before applying. Izuku was relieved to hear Osamu-kun was going to be getting some different shoes. As nice as primordial shoes were, they were too identifiable in the medical field, and Osamu-kun would undoubtedly be harassed by both sides for being a Tutos. Osamu-kun would face problems because of his age and didn't need to have heroes and his coworkers alike questioning his every move. Osamu-kun, wrapped up in his excitement, had accidentally spilled his drink on himself. Sorry? I'll be right back," the boy promised before running off to the bathrooms, leaving Izuku and Zuki-san by themselves. Zuki-san downed the rest of his shot, then sighed and turned his attention to Izuku. "I'm shit with words, but I have to thank you. The bastard might actually have a chance," Zuki-san suddenly told him. Izuku laughed awkwardly, rubbing the back of his neck. "I didn't do that much, Zuki-san. Osamu-kun put the work in himself after all," Izuku corrected, making Zuki-san scoff as he poured himself another shot. "Kid, I'm self-aware enough to know I've been a massive piece of crap for my entire life. The only time I've ever not been a complete dick is for that bastard. For as much as I do for him, the squirt would never have gotten up the nerve to do half the shit he's done without you encouraging him," Zuki-san told him. Izuku was going to argue, but Zuki-san flicked his forehead. "Don't fucking try, bitch. I was an unruly brat until my parents had enough and kicked my ass to the curb. I was a total scumbag to the dumbass idiotic enough to be in a relationship with me. The only person I've ever done right by is the kid my ex ditched, and even then, I ain't anything close to a role model, so don't you dare try telling me I'm not a piece of shit," Zuki-san warned, pointing a threatening finger at Izuku. Well, you could be worse. Izuku defiantly thought. People like that weren't as uncommon as Izuku would have hoped. The fact always sat bitterly on his tongue and would easily become outright sour if he couldn't do anything about it. After Izuku remained silent, Zuki-san continued to speak and asked, "Do you remember when I first told you that two toes should keep moving?" Izuku could have scoffed. How could he ever forget that? People don't easily forget learning about ancient evils out to destroy them for existing. "Well, I'm planning on packing our crap and getting the bastard out of Dodge. He's at the prime age where two toes end up disappearing. Plan on telling the squirt it's so he'll have better job opportunities." Zuki-san informed him, and Izuku felt a lump form in his throat at the thought of Osamu-kun just vanishing one day without anyone to hear him crying for help. As sad as it would be to not see Osamu-kun every Tuesday, Izuku would never be so selfish as to risk Osamu-kun's life for something so minor. Izuku balked, almost choking on his drink because Zuki-san suddenly whacked him on the back of the head. "We'll stay in contact. Dillweed. Do you think I can afford to live anywhere other than a shithole?" Zuki-san scoffed at him. Izuku shouldn't be so happy to hear his student would be living somewhere so unsafe, but knowing the Terras were still going to be in the red light districts freed the lump from his throat. Zuki-san sked, "Even if I could. Red light districts have more anonymity and fewer bigots." The man spat, and Izuku couldn't help agreeing. He could only remember meeting someone openly quirkist in the districts on two hands. The number of quirkists in the safe neighborhood he grew up in was, by comparison, utterly ridiculous. Following that thought, Izuku briefly wondered just what his life might be like if he had grown up in the south side instead of Mizudafu. However, the thought was easily tossed aside as Osamu-kun rushed back to their table. Not that Izuku was too invested in it. He was far happier with where he was in his life now, sitting in a sketchy bar with a convicted criminal and the man's son enjoying some, questionably, legally locally caught shrimp. Yeah, Izuku would much rather be here than sitting in a middle school classroom. As it turned out, the only day available for his finals was Thursday, so he'd have to take them then unless he wanted to spend money on another semester. Izuku had all of 2 days to prepare himself, something he cried about to his mom at dinner. His mom tried her best to comfort him, but she was crying too hard about him being a genius to properly form the words. Izuku tried his best to power through it, though probably spent a little too much time reviewing his study materials when he was in Cauchy. Some of his more observant students had unfortunately picked up on his tension, and he had to stop them from going on a witch hunt. The embarrassment of the whole thing at least distracted him for the day. Taking his finals was marginally less stressful this time around. A bored teen was at the front desk, just ran his papers through and tossed him a map of the college campus. An overall much more pleasant interaction compared to the first time around. The woman overseeing the exam was a breath of fresh air, even if Izuku couldn't understand everything she was saying. Unfortunately, Izuku didn't finish in the top 50%, but he skirted the edge of passing and went home with 2 papers for his mom to frame. Due to the short notice, his mom couldn't get time off to celebrate with him or with the Bakugas since they were on a business trip, and Izuku returned home to an empty apartment. Well, empty wasn't the right word, as Izuku found a store-bought box of cupcakes with a caramel-scented Eraserhead-themed mug on top of it. If Izuku had to physically restrain himself from going over to the Bakugas and hugging Kaken to death, well, then he'd just tell the neighbors their pipe sprang a leak again. He cried enough over the gift for it to be believable. After riding out the wave of heart-wrenching emotion, Izuku carefully put Kaken's mug away and sat down at his desk to go over his emails, checking the progress of his work-related projects like the offer he put on the building in Yaizu. He was halfway through typing a reply to the realtor when he got a phone call. Izuku recognized the ringtone and answered right away. Izuku greeted. Yuri-sen chuckled back. "Your pronunciation is getting better." Yuri-sen replied, "I'm glad to hear it, but isn't it a bit early? You usually call after I finish work for the day." Izuku inquired. Yuri-sen wasn't one for randomly calling. "Told me you've finished college," Yuri-sen explained, and Izuku huffed bemused. "Right, Yumiko-chan's brother is studying at the same college." Izuku commented, "I wanted to personally congratulate you. Few people can make it through college twice." Yuri-sen further elaborated, making Izuku's face a touch red from his praise. "Well, it wasn't that hard. I probably only graduated so early because I had so much experience from teaching in the red lights," Izuku said, brushing it off. "Perhaps. I'm sure your mother is proud of you either way," Yuri-sen conceded. Izuku thought back to the encouraging voicemail. His mom had left him before she left for work. "Yeah, she's been over the moon about it. She definitely would have taken the day off to celebrate with me if she had more notice," Izuku told him. Knowing his mom, she'll also insist on making him katsudon for dinner and get him a present on the way home. He was unable to stop himself from smiling when he thought about it. Was she not able to get today off? Yuri-san innocently inquired. Izuku scratched his cheek, suddenly feeling bashful. "Well, you see, I might not have been paying attention to my courses, and only figured out I was going to graduate last Tuesday." He explained, the last sentence coming out faster than Izuku wanted it to. Izuku heard Yuri-san hum back. "I see. What time would she be getting off work?" the man asked. "Either 2000 hours or 2030 tonight. Mom works 12-hour shifts at Mizudafu General." Izuku answered, wondering what Yuri-san was planning. "In that case, would you like to meet me at Eros?" Yuri-san offered, and Izuku blinked, stunned. "I guess I could do that." Izuku muttered, unsure why Yuri-san wanted to meet up at the man's nightclub. Not that he would mind the man's company. "Good. I have a present for you, and I'd prefer to give it to you in person," Yuri-san told him, and instantly Izuku felt himself fall at ease because that was a rather benign reason to meet and believable considering their odd relationship. Though Izuku was curious what kind of gift Yuri-san would have for him. "Okay. I can be at Eros in Say an hour? Izuku said, glancing at the time. Yuri-san promised. Izuku said his goodbyes and then went to get himself ready, planning on going to work after meeting Yuri-san. The first thing Izuku noticed when he was walking up to the building was that Eros looked different during the day, especially without the neon lights illuminating it. The second was Valentine waiting outside by the door, presumably for him. Izuku waved to the stoic man and Valentine just motioned to the door with his head. Going inside, Eros was pretty dead other than the staff cleaning up and restocking the bar. Izuku didn't dawdle going up the stairs and to Yuri-san's private booth, where the man was indeed waiting for him, nursing a drink of some kind. Izuku greeted, slipping into the booth and sitting near Yuri-san. He received a soft smile in return. Hello? It must have been a long walk. Would you like something? Maliki wouldn't mind whipping something up for you, Yuri-san offered. Maybe it said something about Izuku's progress in accepting help since he was considering taking Yuri-san up on that, or maybe it was because he skipped breakfast because of his anxiety over the finals. Could go either way if Izuku was being honest with himself. Maybe something small would be nice, just a burger or two. Izuku reluctantly admitted and Yuri-san nodded, cell phone already in hand and texting away, so Izuku said, unable to feel anything less than childish as he kicked his legs back and forth. Izuku asked, hoping he remembered the right conjunctions. Yuri huffed out a cloud of condensation. Eager are we? Yuri-san asked, somehow coming off as teasing by only raising an eyebrow. Izuku ducked his head bashfully and rubbed the back of his neck. It's fine, Yuri-san assured, grabbing a piece of paper from his vest pocket and offered it to Izuku. Yuri-san told him. Curious, Izuku took the paper and unfolded it to read it. Izuku blinked. Is this the deed to the Midoriya Hotel? He questioned, staring at the paper as if the answer wasn't in front of him in black and white. Yes. I know you've been trying to find yourself properties in the districts. Such a thing can be difficult when you don't have much money, so I thought I'd give you a leg up, Yuri-san explained, and Izuku balked at how causal Yuri-san was about giving away a 67 million yen business. I can't accept this, Izuku replied, worried and concerned about this counting as some kind of bribe or officially having ties to the Russian ma. I assure you, this gift is 100% legitimate. No dirty money, criminal ties, or strings attached, Yuri-san told him, but Izuku wanted to protest, but Yuri-san held up his hand. I still have a civilian identity and fully legal businesses in my name. One doesn't live as long as I have without dabbling in various things, some of which have been profitable, Yuri-san firmly informed him, and Izuku sighed, shaking his head. Staring at the deed, resigned but not ungrateful, the Midoriya Hotel would be a great cornerstone for him in Yaizu. Fine, but I'll only accept this on one condition, Izuku told the man. Yuri-san tilted his head, silently imploring Izuku to continue. If you tell me about your quirk, I'll take the Midoriya Hotel, Izuku elaborated, and Yuri-san huffed out another cloud of condensation. Deal. Yuri-san responded with the equivalent of a grin on his face, giving Izuku the distinct feeling he hadn't won anything. Izuku put his face in his hands and groaned. Normal people don't have to argue about giving away multi-million property for free. Izuku grumbled, normal people are boring. Yuri-san replied, far too stone-faced for how mischievous he was being right now. Izuku may have kicked Yuri-san's leg in retaliation and only got a frigid foot in return. Yuri-san leaned his head back with a soft hum. I suppose how my quirk works is a fair place to begin, yes? Or would its name be better? Yuri-san questioned. Izuku huffed, annoyed, as he leaned back. I would like to know what your quirk is called. Izuku confessed, his arms crossed. It had been bugging him. He didn't know much about Yuri-san's quirk outside of it being ice-related and maybe touch-based. Yuri-san watched Izuku's childishness with fond amusement and began to explain. It has had a few names over the years, changing as I discovered more about it. The name that was finally settled on is cryogenic preservation. The name alone made Izuku perk up. Cryogenic preservation? Cryogenic makes sense for an ice quirk, but preservation? Preservation of what? Does that mean you can keep your ice around for a long time? I still have that marble you made me, so maybe. Is that why your chill lingers on everything you touch? Can you make regular ice last longer than normal? Izuku said, launching into over 1,000 questions, his mind running wild with just the name alone. Yuri-san's airy chuckle made Izuku slap a hand over his mouth, wondering if he was embarrassed enough to choke out a cloud of condensation himself from how hot his face felt. You're correct. One of the things I can do is make cold things last longer, regardless of whether or not I make it with my quirk, though anything made from my quirk naturally lasts much longer, Yuri-san answered. Izuku suspected that might be the case after leaving the marble Yuri-san made out for a week. Izuku tried to speed up the melting process with a microwave which had done nothing even when on the highest setting for 10 minutes. The marble was even still sitting on his desk as cold as ever. To put what my quirk does in very simple mechanics, I can passively absorb or actively draw the cold out of anything around me and then manipulate it however I see fit, whether physically or just temperature-wise, Yuri-san explained, making a ball of ice the size of an 8-ball in the palm of his hand. The preservation aspect is for two reasons. The first is what I create with my quirk can last for far longer than scientifically possible according to the laws of energy conversion, the only exceptions being fire quirks can speed up the melting process, or when I reabsorb what I created. Yuri-san told Izuku as he demonstrated the absorption part by making the ice ball disappear again. Yuri-san paused, staring at his hand morosely before continuing. The second is because of a side effect from stockpiling all of that cold. My quirk generates far too much cold naturally in addition to what I absorb, and if I let it build up too much it will leak out onto whatever is physically touching me. Yuri-san said, his tone having an odd pitch Izuku hadn't previously heard from the man, but Yuri-san continued before he could ask about it. Even with regular use of my quirk causes me to passively release a temperature difference strong enough it can be felt in the air around me, which in combination with my body being suited for housing an ice quirk has effectively put me in a perpetual and self-sustaining cryogenic stasis. Izuku paused, his mind carefully digesting the information. His heart suddenly sinking as the implication started to sink. Is that what you mean when you say, when one has been around as long as I have, and why you look so? Izuku timidly asked, trailing off as uncertainty filled him. Young. Yuri-san finished for the greenette, and Izuku nodded, unable to find his voice. Yuri-san sighed, releasing a large thick cloud of condensation. Yes. By the time I was 15 my quirk had built enough power to slow my aging down to an almost non-existent level. The only reason I look as old as I do now is from overusing my quirk to the point I didn't have enough strength left for the loop to keep working temporary. Yuri-san answered, avoiding Izuku's wide eyes. Izuku's mouth opened as questions swirled in his mind. How old was Yuri-san truly? Had he ever married before his wife? Was Anya-san his only child? Why was someone so strong and mature bothering to entertain someone as immature as him? Was Yuri-san there for the raise of All for One? Is that why Yuri-san knew so much about All for One? Did that mean Yuri-san had to fight for the right to be called a human being? How many of the quirk wars has he lived through? What did Yuri-san truly feel about quirkless people? However, not one word left his lips, and Izuku just stared at the man. How his hands were ever so subtly trembling, the hints of frost climbing across the booth and the plastic glass Yuri-san was holding, the way his breath was coming out in clouds, and most importantly the fact that Yuri-san wasn't fully there from the distant look in his eyes. Instead, Izuku took a deep breath to steady his nerves as he, perhaps very foolishly, moved to sit right beside Yuri-san, and despite the almost painful chill Izuku felt just from where their legs were touching, Izuku hugged Yuri-san from the side even if his frost-covered hands couldn't reach each other. Yuri-san sharply inhaled, and his body went rigid as soon as Izuku did. Izuku said, forcing himself to not sputter despite how badly his body was shaking, the tears rolling down his face, painfully freezing on his cheeks. One of Yuri-san's arms hesitantly wound up around Izuku with his hand buried in Izuku's curls. Yuri-san said back, his voice twisted up with emotion, and perhaps the extreme cold was starting to get to him. But Izuku thought the chills rattling his bones weren't as intense now. Dabi was grumbling as he left the corner store with a grocery bag in hand. Quinn, the old fart behind the counter, couldn't mind his own damn business. The fucker would always con him into taking something for lunch. At least the geezer stopped trying to give him one of the Twinkies' coats. One of the benefits of being built for an ice quirk meant he didn't need more than a light jacket and boots to be comfortable walking around the middle of winter. Another benefit was being able to enjoy popsicles whenever he wanted. That is exactly what he was doing as he moseyed his charred ass over to Charlotte's apartments, and he jammed his fourth lime popsicle in his mouth, almost immediately biting down on it. Something that Red would have disapproved of if she was there to see it. Not that it would stop Dabi from doing it. Honestly, Dabi had no idea why everyone was so damn anal about his eating habits. He's gained at least 9 kilos since he started playing Rent-A-Cop for the Twinkie. Sure, Dabi was still underweight by 10 or so kilos, but between his popsicle addiction and Red's cooking, he'd be back to a healthy BMI before spring. At least it was getting easier to patrol his beat with the extra muscle he's packed onto his calves. Well, that and people were taking him more seriously as the Twinkies hired help. Crack open a few heads and give some drunks their asses back to them and people will stop treating you like a lapdog. Who knew? Of course, that's not to say he necessarily hated being a Rent-A-Cop. The brats running around without a care in the world certainly put his mind at ease. And no matter what Red said, he did not have a stack of drawings from said brats hidden under his bed. Unfortunately, for his introverted self, Dabi's social circle had forcibly been expanded due to his work, and he could name everyone he meets with daily. The old fart Quinn at the corner store, the 2 twisted twins at the other corner store, Red's bestie Charlotte, the annoying teen at the 100 yen place that needed to learn to keep her nose out his business. The old hag running the secondhand depot was cool though. 10 out of 10 badass old bitch that would slip him more popsicles when Red took his, which were 5 people too many, but he didn't have much choice and would have to deal with it. At least the Twinkie wasn't expecting miracles from his ass, just to keep the shithole from getting worse than it was. As Dabi was passing an alley, and he was nearly stomped on by one of the few people in the district he did know. The walking Giko Iguchi, better known as Zilla. Oh, sorry Dabi. I didn't see you there. Zilla apologized, rubbing the back of his head, and Dabi scoffed, obviously. He spat, shooting Zilla the evil eye. The lizard had enough awareness to look away ashamed. I was just brushing the snow off of the dish for Aki-chan, Zilla bashfully explained and meekly pointed toward the roof. Dabi rolled his eyes and continued to Charlotte's, fully intending on leaving Zilla to his own devices. Zilla, however, had different plans and was now following him. Dabi scowled but had an idea for why Zilla was trailing after him like an ugly duckling. You ripped your coat again, didn't you, Geeko? He questioned, and Zilla ducked his head. I just need to stitch it up at home and it'll be fine, Zilla mumbled back, messing with a ripped sleeve on his large coat. Dabi groaned, fine, you can follow me until I get to Charlotte Stalker. He begrudgingly told Zilla. The lizard sighed, relieved, and he moved to walk right next to him with the arm in the ripped sleeve carefully tucked under his other arm. Thanks, Dabi, Zilla said back, and Dabi scared. I'm only letting you stalk me because the damn Twinkie would be on my ass if I didn't. The fucker can't stand to see a big dumb animal like you suffer. Dabi spat before taking another bite of his popsicle. Right? Zilla snorted, making Dabi's eye twitch, but he ultimately ignored the reptile's comment. Okay, maybe Dabi lost his shit that one time he found Zilla wandering the street like a zombie, but it didn't have anything to do with this moment right now. Dabi does have an I will fuck your shit up vibe he needed to maintain for his job. Dabi was almost home free, but at the shrine Zilla stopped to chit-chat with the old farts bug quirked part-timer, and no matter how much Dabi wanted to ditch them, he couldn't because looking after dumb kids was unfortunately in his job description. Hi, Ricky. Any problems with the register today? Zilla asked, and the guy chuckled, making his mandibles flare out to the sides. Nah. The backroom lights have gotten fucked though. Did you get to that part of your training yet? He asked, and Zilla beamed. Yes. We did that last week when we were going over fuse boxes, Zilla excitedly told them, making Dabi roll his eyes. Only a geeko like him would get so excited over electrical wiring. Great. I'll let you in once I'm done cleaning up in here, Ricky replied, motioning back to the shrine with just his head seeing as his forearms were full of random debris and a brew. Don't you get enough work at the old fart's place? Why are you busting your spindly ass here on the weekend? Dabi pointed out. Honestly, Dabi could only count on one hand the times he hadn't caught Ricky at the shrine during the weekends. Ricky averted his eyes and his mandibles pressed closer to his lower jaw. Yeah. It's kind of pathetic, but survivor's guilt is a real bitch and half sometimes, Ricky awkwardly joked. What? Zilla asked with enough confusion and concern Dabi didn't need to voice his own. Ricky gave them a look before his eyes got wide. Fuck. Right, you two weren't around for that shit show, Ricky said, and he cursed himself under his breath. Ricky took a deep breath. Right, so last year near the end of January, Indehor was chasing some beatnik, Ricky told them, and already Dabi lost his appetite, having a very good idea where the bug boy was going with this, and surprise, surprise, the licensed serial arsonist has the worst aim on the damn planet and ended up setting part of the district on fire. Ricky explained, his face twisting into disgust. Yup, that's what I thought he would say. Dabi mentally scoffed to himself, adding another skeleton to his sperm donor's closet. That's horrible. Is that why the street around here is charred? Zilla empathized, with his eyes wandering to the ashy black road they were standing on. Ricky scoffed. Got it in one. There used to be 10 old apartment buildings here before the bastard came and burned it down. Ricky answered something that again didn't surprise Dabi. The sperm donor absolutely had the firepower to do it, and the buildings the Twinkie didn't own were falling apart at the seams. Cammy, that must have been terrifying to watch, Zilla said, looking rather shaken from imaging it. Try being trapped in that shit. Ricky scoffed, making Zilla's mouth drop. Why, you were... Zilla couldn't bring himself to finish his question, but it wouldn't take a genius to figure out what he was asking. Ricky nodded. Aki and I used to live here. Our building was right where this shrine is. Aki was at a sleepover at the time, thank God, so it was just me here at the time, and I tried to grab our shit and but I got pinned by a support beam, Ricky glumly explained. Ricky's mandibles again pulled tight against his lower jaw. Have you ever seen those scenes on TV or in movies where a room is on fire? He asked, which Zilla nodded, whereas Dabi shook his head and Ricky laughed mirthlessly. Well, it ain't anything like that. Other than the fire, you can't see shit. The only thing I could feel was that I was being crushed and suffocated by a black void. Ricky grimly recalled, much to Zilla's horror, and Dabi unfortunately could empathize. He hadn't been stuck in a burning building, but training with Indehor wasn't that far off, honestly. I don't know what part of that night fucked me up the most. The fact I could have died, or that even if I screamed for help no one would come. Ricky breathlessly confessed, and it hit Dabi in just the wrong place. Because that was a fucked up thought that seemed to persist in his mind since before he faked his death. When did he stop screaming for his mom to help him because he knew she wouldn't? When did he stop begging her to stop Indehor because she never would? Why did Fuyumi keep pushing them to be a normal family when she knew everything their bastard sperm donor had done to them? Did Shudo ever call them for help when he was forced to start training? A simple fuck unintentionally escaped his lips and prompted more hollow laughter from Ricky. Yeah, that day was pretty fucked up in general. I definitely wouldn't be here talking with you two chucklefucks if it wasn't for Deku-Sensei. Ricky commented. Deku-Sensei was there? Zilla said, having found his voice again. Ricky huffed at that. Who do you think got my ass out of the building? Half this shithole would have burned to the ground if Deku-Sensei hadn't been there to pull our heads out of our asses. Ricky stated, as if it was obvious the Twinkie would be there. What about the heroes? Zilla asked, making Ricky scoff, and Dabi didn't blame him. His sperm donor usually left clean up like that to his sidekicks. Aguchi, when was the last you've seen a hero in the South Side? Ricky questioned, taking Zilla off guard. I don't dash, Zilla sputtered, but was cut off by Ricky's TSK. Exactly. No hero has stepped foot inside the district for 39 years straight. Indehor didn't need to be in the South Side to fuck us over, Ricky told them, and that was something that shocked Dabi just as much as the Geeko. What? Dabi dumbly said, and Ricky gave them a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. This might come as a shock to you, but every Southsider damn well knows we are the people the rest of Japan desperately tries to forget exists because they don't want to deal with our insane bullshit. Except for when some cop comes to yank one of us to jail. No one of any authority has come to help us since the 30s. Ricky explained it to them as if it was an objective fact. Teach, that can't be legal, Zilla said, lost in his disbelief. The heroes, much less the cops, could ignore such a massive disaster without charges against them. Zilla added, completely horrified. Not that Dabi was much better in that regard. His sperm donor was a fucking trash fire incarnate, but to think that he could get away with something like this, terrorizing his family, was something that could be missed, but burning a district to the ground? There's no way the vultures working in journalism would pass on that kind of story. Ricky scoffed at them, and with what money or people could we use to sue the bastards? If anyone here actually took the number 2 to court, we would get charged out of our asses with slander long before anyone would give us the time of day. He venomously elaborated for them, and no matter how much it enraged Dabi, he knew Ricky was right because he had seen Indehor's legal team countersue people to ruin. Until 2 years back, no one living outside of the South Side has cared whether or not we all killed ourselves for a near 37 damned years. Ricky bitterly spat, and Dabi found himself struggling to understand what he thought about that. On one hand, he knew society was utterly fucked up in ways most people couldn't comprehend. Hell, he and his siblings were a direct result of one of those fucked up parts of society. But to think it would be such a clusterfuck that an entire district could be under martial law without anyone caring just felt surreal to him. Zilla, the big hero nerd, he seemed to be taking this news even worse than he was. What changed 2 years ago? Zilla hesitantly asked, having caught on to the time difference, and this time Ricky genuinely smiled at That's when Deku-Sensei first came to the district. He started coming around to tutor the kids, but then he began giving out food, clothes, and medical shit for us without being asked. Ricky answered, his tone lightening significantly. Then when the crap hit the fan during the inferno, Deku-Sensei helped us till the fires were put out, and he dumped a shit ton of money to build the apartments over there. Ricky continued, motioning over to Charlotte's building next door to the shrine, and if that wasn't enough, he bled even more money putting together this massive funeral for everyone that died because of Indehor. He's why this shrine for them exists, Ricky said with a huff, as if he couldn't believe it himself. That wasn't what Dabi expected to hear. Sure, he knew the Twinkie was well respected for some godforsaken reason, but would the kid go that far? Though looking back on all his interactions with the brat, he couldn't stop a part of himself from thinking that sounds exactly like something the Twinkie would do without hesitation, simply because he could. Deku-Sensei did all of this? Zilla questioned, awestruck by this reveal. Ricky chuckled, yeah, and the only thing he wants from us is a little respect, and I don't think that's a bad price for knowing there is someone out there who honestly gives a fuck about you. Deku-Sensei truly is one of a kind, Ricky confirmed, a bit wistful before shaking his head. Fuck. Sorry about the tangent, guys. I'm sure you both got shit to do. I'll meet you at Miyake's later, Aguchi. Ricky apologized, and then he quickly got back to work. Zilla's hand reached out to stop Ricky, but ultimately decided not to, and the two continued walking to Charlotte's building. After a few seconds, the tense silence was too much, and Zilla quietly asked, Did you know any of that, Dabi? Dabi's mind raced for any hint of the things Ricky had told them. Sure, there were the rumors of Deku-Sensei's influence and sway over the powers that be. He even knew the ones about helping to refine any quirk had some damning truth to them if that guy on the news was the bum he used to see on the streets once a while. But not once could Dabi recall anyone talking about what his sperm donor had done to the South Side. Red certainly hadn't told him anything about this, but he couldn't be so sure Red knew about this because she had only been around a month longer than he had. He'd be asking Red when he got to the bakery just to be sure, though. Dabi couldn't help thinking what Red's reaction might be if she didn't know, and he scoffed. Nope, Dabi replied, and Zilla's gaze fell to the blackened, cracked sidewalk, thinking very hard about all of this. Deku-Sensei is so cool, Zilla commented, smiling, making Dabi huff. Even if he did half of that crap Bug Boy said he's done, the brat is still a damn Twinkie. Dabi shot back. Zilla just chuckled at him, grinning as he said, Sure, Dabi. And that's a wrap on part 14, folks. If you haven't seen the earlier parts yet, make sure to visit the playlist. A huge shout out to the author. Don't forget to show your support. I'll be back soon. Thanks for tuning in.